Fact of the matter is we can treat you with HIV. We can treat you. But AIDS is a cruel, mean, and ugly disease that destroys the body and the spirit. It takes prisoners and does not let up. You may start at 2 pills and end up, today I take 15 pills a day. I still get infections. My T cell count is 5 something. I still get infections that the doctors, that my immune system won't fight off, but they've now become resistant to medication. I have a PICC line in my arm right now. I'm on IV meds twice a day, 2 hours a day. And so I told Ed, I said, yeah, I tweet the pictures when I'm all fabulous and, you know, I'm looking good though, and yeah. I will tweet the pictures out with Miss Warwick wearing my bracelets and Cheryl wearing my, yes. But I also tweet the pictures when sometimes I'm looking fabulous and I go into a restaurant and I shit on myself. I tweet that too. Because the reality is that AIDS is hard. And people, I got a tweet the other day, girl said, well, how did you get HIV and herpes? Was you reckless? She just asked me, was I a hoe? There was nothing in between that. She just wanted to know if I was a hoe. And so there is still an enormous amount of stigma attached to this disease. And so it's hard, I want you to hear me, it's hard to take care of yourself with this disease when you can't have the adequate support system because you're afraid of what people will think about you and how they will treat you. It's hard. Depression is very common among people with HIV. When people are depressed, they don't take their medicines. So while we can treat you, it's hard. We still have the emotional baggage, the stigma that's attached to it. The woman who says that my mother takes me to the hospital, to the doctor, the clinic every week, but she refuses to go in with me. And so while people with cancer only have to deal with the physical aspects, what does it mean to deal with cancer and chemo? People with HIV, we have to deal with the medicines, the treatments. We have to deal with the fact that we can't get any because just about every ADAP list in the country is overlisted and weighted. Am I right, you all? We have to deal with whether we can get our HIV meds, and then we got to deal with whether in fact our mother will embrace us. That is the reality, the day to day. And so prevention is our best bet. Let me give you this quick cycle and I'm going to let it go. Show you how stigma works. People don't go get tested for HIV because they don't want to go to the HIV clinic. They don't want nobody to know why you getting an AIDS test? We even have doctors to say, well, what you need an HIV test for? Everybody need an HIV test, including the damn doctor. Don't know our HIV status. African Americans, 38% of all newly diagnosed cases of HIV are people infected by people who didn't know they were HIV infected. So we don't go get tested, so we infect others, and we die quicker because most African Americans find out their HIV status when they have AIDS. They're already dying. And so while we have to deal with the medical, we've advanced and clinically, the stigma still has us. We don't go get tested, we don't go get treated, and there are some people that don't want to go get treated because they don't want nobody to see them going into the AIDS clinic. And so we have an enormous amount of work to do. I said this before I left Chicago. I put it on my Facebook page. It is admirable that Dionne Warwick, she could have done anything for her 50th anniversary. She could be in Las Vegas right now partying. She couldn't have done anything. But we need more Dionne Warwicks.
Mr. Johnson, if we talk about stigma, it is, I would think, safe to say that it is even a larger stigma for men. And the sense that you have to deal with, and in particular in our community, give me a sense of where we are, because it really honestly does not seem like we have broken much ground there. We've broken ground in the general sense of AIDS, and the general sense of, I think, through Essence and Cheryl and some of the others, Ms. Warwick and others who've gone out and really, I think, spread this. Women tend to listen in a different way. Let me speak for the brothers, we don't listen to much of nothing. So it seems as though we've made very little headway in understanding how this affects us. Is that fair?
This is a really great panel. They brought up a lot of they kind of stole a little bit of my thunder when I wanted to talk about some statistics over here, so I hit it right on, and you talked about a lot of the sort of the social issues, the stigmas, the structural issues like poverty that really kind of confound the impact that this epidemic has had on communities of color in general. But for men, there is an added stigma to many of them, and many men of color assume that it's a gay disease. So there's no culturally appropriate way to deal with men who have sex with men, or Latino and Black men, in terms of getting them to test routinely and to be open about their sexual orientation and preferences, if that's where they stand. There is sort of this added boundary. I think one thing I've been remiss to say is that the CDC just came out with a study that said that we should be testing more, not only annually, this is a recommendation for the general population, but for communities of color, particularly high-risk communities of color, should be testing every 3 to 6 months because of the seroprevalent rate within those communities. It's not about being promiscuous anymore. It's about the virus running rampant and us having to deal with it in a systematic way, bringing prevention and care together, actually being more open about how to use biomedical approaches. What I mean by biomedical is HIV meds in order to prevent new infections.
Not heard from. Once we hear from them, we're going to turn our attention to you. So if you have some questions, please start to get them ready. I would also note, Kevin, let me go to you from the aspect, and I know that we want to talk about, we should note that you worked for BET for many, many years, and one of the things that we see, I use the idea of the commercialization of Dr. King's image as really hurting the image of how deep this man was and who he was and what he did. Too often we see his image, a candle, a choir in the background, and we say the dreamer, and that's the only thought that particularly young people have of him. There has been, to a great degree, a commercialization of this disease, has it not?
Ed has talked about the fact that we worked together at BET, and I remember the day in November of 1991 where we gathered around the television as Urban Magic Johnson made his announcement of his HIV status. And from that day, quietly and almost deliberately, the conversation about HIV and AIDS has shifted. The pictures changed, and we didn't have to talk anymore about hospice visits and hospitals. We got to see a tall, brown man who we wondered if he was on the down low for a minute. Don't act like we didn't. And then once he didn't die, because AIDS had a cycle when we first went through this, through this journey in the 80s, and we saw hulking men become, bones and skin and soon pass away. And when Magic wasn't dead in a year, we started to think that perhaps there was magic in the air. And then we were introduced to Greg, and then to Hadia Broadbent. And then all of a sudden, we got tired of the story. The 3 people we were paying attention to, because we don't care nothing about our cousins. We don't care nothing about the boy in the choir. We care about the celebrities, or the people we make celebrities because they end up on a magazine cover. And when they didn't die, the conversation died. And I'm really appalled, from the seat of a preacher at the number of churches that have blood on their hands and AIDS money in their pockets from faith-based initiatives so that they can talk about mean, we're not talking about sex and sexuality. And here we are, 20 years later, and I thank God that I got to use this word a couple of times in interviews this weekend, that Dionne Warwick is using this celebration to resuscitate the conversation about HIV and AIDS. When I have young people coming to me saying, Pastor, you know, this is young gay boys, because I'm in the middle of a college campus. So whosoever will, people forget that should be over the front door of every church. I don't know how that happened, but we're going to try to move that campaign forward too. And when they say, Pastor, I'm in love, me and this boy, black boy are in love, you know, how long do we have to be together monogamously before we stop using condoms? I said, forever. Because until we can figure out what it is about this particular penis and this particular anus that somehow gives birth to the HIV, until we can figure out how come this vagina and this penis, until we know these facts, the sexual lives of us in America have changed. And we have to begin to deal with that. And here comes a shocking statement from the pastor. We have to get off our asses and do something. And when I talk about getting off our ass and doing something, I'm going to be very crypto for y'all, because when he rode into Galilee, Jesus intentionally rode in on a slow-moving thing. He said, bring me an ass so that the people who've been waiting for the Savior can see him. Slow-moving thing, he rode into town so that he could shake hands and folks could take pictures and load it up on the YouTube. But then he got off of that ass and he did something. And now it's a clarion call to every preacher and every loving mama and every big mama and every friend to have a conversation with our kids again. I wanted to slap the taste out of my son's mouth when he brought home the news that his girlfriend was pregnant. And I said, son, how is this possible? How did this happen when we have the conversation all the time and there are condoms all over the house? He said, Dad, they told me that people who love each other don't have to use condoms. And that's some church talk. They're making gay sex abominable and making it seem like these people were in the cut in the dark doing stuff. But our kids are only hearing that Magic is still alive, that Ray is still alive, that Hadia is still alive, and the sissies over there on the other side of town are doing something that we no longer have to talk about. And so all of the numbers are going up, and I have to sit my son down and say, son, do I pay the rent with a condom on? No. Do I help you with your homework with a condom on? No, because condoms have nothing to do with love. They have to do with protection. And until we can make it as simple as condom, unprotected sex, we're always going to try to have these pictures. It disgusts me in America that in order to see heartbreaking pictures of people going through the journey of HIV and AIDS, they have to send boatloads of reporters over to Africa. Because in America, when they want to talk to Ray now, they only want to see the pretty Ray. Ray can't send that picture from the restaurant. She can't send that to Essence. They don't want to see that. They don't want to see the days when Idea's not doing well. We don't want to see the days when Magic's not doing well. We don't want to have black folk, and we don't have brown folk, we don't have a conversation about sex, period. We're going to watch a whole generation die from ignorance. What profit us? What profit us to gain the whole world, blinged out 5 African American networks if we lose the soul of our people? And we've done so because we are a slow moving thing that gets really bored with a long-term conversation.